Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and alongside me is Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
As you know, there is an international break this weekend, and so we thought we would give you guys a special podcast looking ahead to sort of the end of season awards now that we've sort of played 75% of the Premier League so far. We're just gonna evaluate our picks and give you guys our thoughts on that. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys and want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. And so, to start off the podcast, I thought we would just separate the positions, attacker, midfielder, defenders, and goalkeepers, and just go one by one to see our picks for who should win that respective category for this year. So without further ado, Mac, I guess this one might be similar for all of us, but attacker of the year, who do you have?
I think this might be the easiest one of the lot of what we'll do today. So it's interesting that we're going to start off with this. You normally would put the most boring thing smack dab in the middle, but I feel like at the same time, in some ways, it is the most exciting because, it's attackers, scoring goals, everyone's excited, But I think this is, like I said, this is pretty obvious here of what we'll go with. It's really Erling Haaland, 100%. Not a shadow of a doubt. He's smashing records, destroying the Premier League. Through 26 games, he already has 28 goals. To give you an idea, I was taking a look back in terms of, and that's just straight goals. Of course, he has tossed in 5 assists, but no one really cares. Everyone's just focusing on the goals, and that's just in the Premier League. Across all leagues, he's been very, very good. But specifically in the Premier League, just to give you an idea of some of the best strikers that you would think of when we're talking about the Premier League, who are the first 2 names that you think would come to mind as a striker in the Premier League? The first 2 entries into the Hall of Fame Premier League strikers. You guys know off the top of your head?
No.
Alan Shearer?
Alan Shearer is one. And the second inductee is an Arsenal legend, Thierry Henry. Alan Shearer's best goals per 90 minute in the Premier League was 0.89. Henry was 0.91. Haaland, goals per 90 minute is 1.19. So he's absolutely destroying both of the probably the most 2 iconic strikers in Premier League history. And the highest number I saw in Premier League history thus far from when I was taking a look, and this is the top level of players, was Ronaldo in his Ballon d'Or winning year with Manchester United. I think that's the 07-08 year, Gio. And he was at 0.102. So Haaland's even doing better than that Ronaldo year. So we're talking about arguably the best goal-scoring season in Premier League history. And he's 22, and he's younger than all those players that I've listed before. Were at their peak, if that makes sense. So it's only up from here in the seasons he's destroying it.
Without even mentioning first season in a new league, in a new environment, and I know you glossed over it, but 5 assists, that's pretty impressive still, with 11 games to go. So yeah, I mean, pretty much got it there. Gio, do you have perhaps anyone else, or do you have Haaland as well for this one?
I don't think you can pick anybody else. I think, you can make the argument, and people will say, obviously he plays for Man City, obviously he should get goals, but realistically, if you're watching soccer, he's not ideally the best fit for Man City. He still had to adapt and learn how Man City plays. Obviously, as a striker, you learn to be in the right place at the right time, and that's where he scored a majority of his goals. Even his 5-goal game, he was in the right place for a lot of his goals, and it just happened, and he just happened to be there. But still, you have to adapt. New league, new everything. It's hard to pick anybody else. It's very arguable, but it's hard to pick anybody else. I think he just deserves he deserves that credit. So. Yeah, no, I think Max said it best, especially with those types of stats. I can't. I personally can't pick anybody but Haaland.
Can't. Exactly. I guess one last stat, just to throw it in there. Just looking on the Premier League website, 44 shots on target out of 90 total shots. Still behind Harry Kane, just second in that list. But if you do the math, and I hope I'm doing the math correctly, 44 and 90, that's about 48.48. So that's every other shot is on target. So I mean, you get that type of conversion rate, then you just expected to score. So yeah, I mean, pretty simple there, Gio.
Well, I mean, he already has 5 more goals than the Golden Boot winners of last year. Well, the tied Golden Boot winners
Exactly.
of last year. So, and what he still has 11 games? You said. So
Yeah.
come on, guys. There's really no. Really it's really hard to debate. Keep in mind, Mo Salah was one of the tied winners, and he's sitting at 7th right now. So it just looks. There's really levels to this season. So yeah, you have to give it to Haaland.
For sure, for sure. I guess then let's move on to maybe a potentially more controversial category, midfielder of the year so far. And to start off the controversy, maybe I'll toss it in for you guys. My pick would be based on the eye test, and I'm going this way just because it's controversial. Rodri will be my standout midfielder of the year. Simply just because he's ever present for that Man City team, and his position, I think he's the best in the league. Passes completed the most in 2,300 passes, over 2,300 passes. Up there in terms of tackles as well. Actually, tied with Bruno Fernandes in 56 tackles in total. So he'll do everything that you need to anchor that that midfield, and even chipping in with 5 assists. So Rodri is my pick for this category. Gio, do you have anyone different?
Yeah. Also based on eye test, but very obvious eye test is the likes of Martin Odegaard. It's night and day when he's on the pitch for Arsenal. We literally scream for him when he's not on the pitch, especially in those games against Sporting where he's very missing. He's desperately needed. Jorginho just isn't that type of quality when you put those two in and out of the lineup. But yeah, no, any and every time that he's not in the lineup, it's pretty obvious, and they're screaming for something even close to his quality when he's not on the pitch. But yeah, as soon as he's on the pitch, it's like you have, like, in basketball terms, you have a true point guard who's really running the offense. So yeah, they definitely miss him when he's not on the pitch. So I have to side with Martin Odegaard. And this person just happened to be Max, PFA Player of the Year, possibly. He's definitely in those talks. Again, another player that, another Norwegian player, but you definitely give him the credit he deserves.
Okay.
100%. It's Scandinavia for the win, right, guys? But I think he was. I recall when I made that shout in our preseason podcast for Odegaard to be PFA Player of the Year. You both were astounded, and I think both of you wanted to leave the chat immediately. But it is what it is. So that was definitely a risky take. I agree with you on this. I think we're in lockstep here with Odegaard. I do want to speak in terms of Rodri. Ray, for you, I would argue he's probably the most irreplaceable player for Manchester City in the midfield. I think that's probably a good way to phrase it, because you've seen KDB leave the lineup who you thought would be that player, and they're still second in the Premier League, right? Where he's been in now, arguably not having his best season, and they're still as productive as ever. Versus whenever we see Calvin Phillips play for Man City, it's kind of, okay, the game's done. That's the only time we see a replacement, really. But in terms, for me though, I do agree with you. Like I said, in regards to Odegaard, he's in terms of what he does on the ball, his creativity down that right hand side. Even though he's traditionally more sits as a 10, he really plays in combination with Saka and Ben White. And the rotation between the three of them on that right hand side is kind of the straw that stirs the drink for an Arsenal attack in a lot of different ways. And I know this might catch some flack considering he just kind of announced his retirement over the course, I think, the last couple of days. And I gave this hot take to you both. I think you both disagree with me, is that Odegaard right now is probably have a better season than Mesut Ozil has ever had. This year, he's already scored 10 goals in the Premier League. Ozil's best scoring in the Premier League was 8 through his entire career. I think in La Liga he had 9, so he never even hit over double digits. So, and that's just solely on the ball in an attacking sense. What he does off the ball is a whole different level, because what he does in terms of pressing is phenomenal. He really much, especially with Jesus out of the lineup, when Nketiah was there, he was one leading the press, making sure everyone is to be able to make sure that they're able to win the ball back in that final third and really get the ball rolling in terms of kind of regaining back possession for Arsenal, and really has been a catalyst of how they're going to change their play style from last year to this year. Is that without him, and you replace majority of other players in there, I feel like, that play in a similar type of position, it's night and day. And I think that he's definitely thus far this year the best midfielder in the Premier League. I did want to make the argument that Saka's a midfielder because I couldn't give him the attacker, but I thought that was too far of a stretch.
So that's also a question that I would have had for you guys if we didn't mention him. But let's mention him now, because I thought Saka would be considered as an attacker, but for that category, not really a contest. But on that note, are there any potential midfielders that we're missing from here that should be included? Obviously, Saka, 12 goals, 10 assists, played in all 28 games for Arsenal so far, and has been a standout performer for Arsenal. Gio, Mac, do you guys potentially have any other players in mind for midfielders of the year? Would Marcus Rashford can be considered a midfielder, or would that be more of an attacker? What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Gio.
I mean, if you're gonna consider Rashford, then you kind of have to consider Saka, and if that's the case, I'm gonna have to side with Saka. But yeah, no, I can't. I wouldn't see it. I guess some biased Man U fans would argue, Casemiro in terms of sheer his presence on the pitch. It's a similar presence. He might not do as much offensively as an Odegaard, but in terms of impact for the squad, then it's definitely a night and day difference when you have to put in a Fred who logs majority in the minutes, or a McTominay that has to log majority in the minutes. Then you can argue Casemiro, but again, another hard argument. Just the improvements Odegaard has made, from last year to this year. It's hard not to give it to him.
I think my only other shout, if I wanted to really stretch it out, was Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle. Just in regards to that midfield, I feel like he is, along with Rodriguez, in terms of irreplaceable for their team. Is that if you slot anyone else in there, the level of drop off from him to somebody else in that lineup, like a Longstaff, there's too much of a degree, and he really is kind of the platform of that. If any attack is really going to happen, and it's the weakest part of that Newcastle team thus far this year, it really starts from him in terms of making sure that outlet pass to either kind of an Almiron or a Saint Maximin is going to occur. It's really kind of what Guimaraes has done, and even defensively, he's been outstanding there as well. So I think if I were to not go with the Odegaard, that probably actually would have been my next shout, and along with Rodri, to be fair. So yeah.
Okay. No, I love that for sure. And on the note for Casemiro, looked up some stats as well. 58 tackles, 12th in the league, but leading in the league in red cards with 2. So hey, that's my ball right there. Let's move on then, guys, to Defender of the Year. Gio, I'm gonna let you go first for that one. Who do you have?
This has to be a biased pick, but biased or not biased, I think it is Lisandro Martinez. I think he, again, off sheer impact. I know we discussed this off camera about impact in terms of Lisandro and of course Ben White. But no, I think even the doubt that players had, or pundits, or even other coaches had in him in terms of his size and his ability, just because of how rough the Premier League is. I think he adjusted very well. Obviously, it took him a couple of games to adjust, but now now he's flying. Now it's a shame that he's not on a starting 11, and you question why he's not in a starting 11. In terms of size, I think he makes up for it in terms of his timing. He makes up for it in terms of his intensity. I think him in that starting 11 makes a night and day difference for Man U, and not having to play anybody else on that side is just fantastic. He takes a lot of that the speed that say like a Varane lacks, so it takes that attention off Varane. That pairing, and definitely Lisandro Martinez definitely should get a lot of credit for that pairing doing as well as they have been.
Yeah, Lisandro, I test definitely one of the most impactful players this season for their respective teams. Just looked up on the website as well. Fifth in blocks in the league, 24. 86 headed clearances, tied with Virgil van Dijk, and one fewer than Arsenal's Gabriel. So that's quite impressive. Obviously, we had the conversation, and not per se us, but obviously everywhere they were talking about his height being a problem. But hey, he's, I think, holding his own for that position. He was actually one of my picks as well for this position, but I think I'm gonna actually, because I predict Mac has the same person, I'm gonna let Mac go first for this one. Mac,
Okay.
bring it home.
So I'm interested to see in terms if you think I'll be interested to see if you actually think that you know me that well. I'm very intrigued. So I'm gonna go work backwards in terms of who I ordered out before I decide kind of give out who I selected. For me, Martinez was probably fourth. Right now, his team's conceded far too many goals. They actually have conceded the same amount. I was conceding more goals than West Ham, who are in the bottom three. So that for me just clears it out, even though he's been very, very good defensively for Manchester United and been a difference maker. Really kind of second and third, I was tossing up between Zinchenko and Saliba, and I decided to go with neither of them. And I actually went with arguably the best defender on the best defensive team. So that would be Sven Botman for Newcastle. In terms of what he's done for that team, he's playing in a back four with Kieran Trippier, which I think we can all agree his best aspect is really his defensive side of the ball. And he has to play beside Dan Burn, who's 6'6" as a left back. So in terms of his ability to be able to cover both spots, be a sound player there. And I think before the last maybe 4 or 5 weeks in the Premier League, you could have argued that Pope would have gotten the shout, but you can kind of see sometimes he may lose his head. So really, I think the solidity that comes from this Newcastle defensive line has been Botman. I know he's really early on in his Premier League career. I think he's only 22, if I want to be able to say this correctly. But he's come in and kind of had. He's 23. I apologize. He's just turned 23. But he's had an immediate impact in his first season. And for me, in terms of what he's done with the best defense, they've only conceded 19 goals. And every other team around them that's close on the table is the next best is Manchester City with 25. So there's quite a big gap in terms of his performance to what everyone else around him has done. So I don't know if that's the same player you had, right? I'm guessing you were a little bit different there.
I did not. I thought you were gonna go with one of your picks for second or third. William Saliba was my pick. Again, going off of eye test as well, and the impact that he's just come in. Essentially, him and Zinchenko, but definitely him as the center back next to a more settled Gabriel, throwing up that defensive line and really ensuring that, even though they concede goals, they still look quite solid at the back, and it's going to be tough for teams to really penetrate, even though they might try to go long and playing behind. I think he has the speed to catch up and the just composure to keep defenders out with his defensive ability. But third in the league in terms of passes, over 1,800 passes completed, and also 20th in the league in battles won with 53. So yeah, just based on positioning in the league for Arsenal and how well he's been in his first year. I know that Botman is as well. This is his first year, but yeah, I guess it could be a toss-up really for those two as well for me. But I guess before we wrap up this category, any notable mentions that we may have missed? I know, Mac, you mentioned Zinchenko already, Saliba, Gio. Perhaps, do you have any one that you might want to mention as well?
Sorry, Gio, I think
you might be on mute.
Sorry, guys. I was going to say another Arsenal defender. The one I am not too fond of, but I think he deserves a lot of credit for their success as well. Not only does he defend, he does score some pretty clutch goals himself, Mr. Gabriel. I think he's a great leader on the pitch as well. Again, that's based off eye test, but again, scoring huge goals for the team. The best defense is a great offense, right? So, he does everything, both sides of the ball as well. He plays with very high intensity every single match. Plays every match like it's his last, and that's the type of intensity, kind of leadership that Arsenal has lacked over the years. And to finally have it in a guy and in a back line where through and through it's very steady. And now that Tomiyasu's out, they're gonna have to tighten up in terms of staying healthy, one, and not taking silly fouls, accumulating cards, and sitting out games. So I think, I think all in all, with him in the middle with Saliba, it's been a great pairing, and he would be another player that deserves a shout.
Yeah, for sure. I love how you mentioned his sort of passion and really drive to keep that defensive line intact. I guess we'll move on now to maybe a category, Mac, that you might be passionate about, being a goalkeeper yourself. Goalkeeper of the year. So, Mac, kick us off for that category, please.
So, for this one, I don't know if I went with the necessarily the obvious choice. I really thought about it, kind of dug into the numbers to see kind of what would be different, because I don't think there's kind of been an individual goalkeeper this season thus far that's kind of outstanded me or separated themselves from the pack. So for me, it really was I exited Pope in terms of these last couple of weeks in terms of his decision making. I feel like that really much separated it, where I look more towards his defensive line versus him maybe. So I really looked at between Alisson, De Gea, and Ramsdale. Between the three, those were the three players I really looked at the most, and I actually decided to go with Alisson. The reason why is I really split the difference between the two of them, and I know, Ray, this will make you very happy in regards to picking it. But I think if you asked me if I were to flip Alisson in terms of how he performed this season into either Arsenal or Manchester United, would those teams be better? Absolutely. And in regards to the numbers, when you're looking at around the save percentage, kind of goals against per 90, it's in and around the same for a lot of these different players. The difference in the stat that really kind of shown up to me is that this season already, Alisson has faced more shots on target than he did in his entire previous season for Liverpool. So he's been peppered, he's been shelled, his defense has been shaky, but he's been the one consistent thing. And I think without them, we'll probably be in a Chelsea situation, to be fair. So I want to be able to make sure, for me, thus far this year, Alisson has been definitely my goalkeeper of the year.
Yeah, for sure. Alisson was gonna be my dark horse, but definitely Pope is gonna be up there. Fewest goal conceded with 19, and definitely him having a standout season. But yeah, like you said, Alisson, the way Liverpool have been playing the season, and him really at times keeping Liverpool in games. I think he's had the most goals prevented a stat here in the league as well, in terms of just the saves that he's had in difficult situations. But also, and it might not be a huge hell, but like you mentioned, 29 goals conceded, Ramsdale at 26, Ederson 25. They're still around each other, but just the quality of saves and moments that he's had to really keep Liverpool in games. Even one penalty saved this season could be a shout for goalkeeper of the year. Most likely won't because of Liverpool's, I guess, position in the table. But I love that pick. But Gio, what's your pick?
I went a different route. I didn't go for any of the top name goalkeepers. I went for Brentford's David Raya. I think so. He actually has 106 saves this season so far, and that leads the table. On top of that, he is also in the top 10 for, let me tell you, in clean sheets. I think he's sitting 6th. Apart from that, it's the difference that Brentford has made. Last year, at the end of the year, they were sitting at 13th. Right now, they're sitting at 8th. So, yeah, even that spatial jump in the table, I think deserves credit. One, and last year at the end of the season, I think they finished with 56 goals against, and right now they're sitting at 34. It's still very possible with the amount of games that they could still concede the 22 goals and still meet that difference. But if they finish 8th, I think they've made quite the big jump, and I think he has a huge part to do with that. Having 106 shots blasted at you, and to keep them in the game for that long. Apart from that, he's already gone because of his performances. I believe he's been garnishing a lot of interest from bigger clubs already. So as their future goalkeepers, noted Manu as well has been in those talks. So hey, a Spaniard to replace a Spaniard, I wouldn't be mad at it. But yeah, no, I think he is one of those keepers that we should keep an eye on, especially his growth and his ability to make it to another big Premier League club, since he already has that experience and he's already seen the ball well in the Premier League. So the eye test is there for the clubs. It's a matter of fact It's just a matter of if Brentford's willing to let go and for how much.
Yeah, I love that pick. Pulling it sort of out of conventional picks. I guess just quickly before we wrap up, I had one myself that potentially you guys may agree or disagree. Not necessarily the standout goalkeeper of the season, but I think pretty good shout. I know he hasn't been featuring recently, but Dean Henderson has been a standout goalkeeper as well. In terms of clean sheets, not as many as Ederson, Alisson, Ramsdale with 6, so a couple fewer, but 2 penalties saved. Really, I guess in the beginning of the season where Nottingham Forest were going through some changes, he was ever present for them in that back line. So I'm interested as well because we saw this week potentially him included in a package deal for Kane, a position that Spurs might need to strengthen. So in terms of keepers that we might be looking to make a move, that could be another goalkeeper. So just wanted to mention that. Mac, do you have anyone else that you might want to shout out for this category?
No, but I love that Raya shout, and that's really just Gio buying goodwill for a future potential Man U buy. So I love it.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna now take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some more of our predictions. So stay with us. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We're gonna continue our podcast now with our sort of predictions, but these, I guess, a couple categories coming up next don't really have an award. It's just, I guess, our personal opinions, and we're gonna start with the most disappointing player thus far this season. There are a couple of games left to play, so maybe these guys can turn it around. But Gio, why don't you get us started with your most disappointing player so far?
My most disappointing player. Okay, boys. He goes by the name of Mo Salah. I hate that man. Honestly, I picked him to be possibly PFA Player of the Year. A huge shout, but obviously has not performed to that level. And yeah, I think in hindsight, obviously it's easy to see in hindsight, but I think obviously Liverpool made that mistake of overpaying him or paying him for that matter. He's he had 22 goals 2 seasons ago in the Prem to 23, and now he has 11 with 11 games to go now, and those 11 goals are from games that possibly out of hand, a couple of clutch goals here and there, but for the majority, it wasn't anything that is like, okay, we need a goal to win the game. So he hasn't been, in terms of an impactful player, he hasn't been big on that either. And yeah, he is, and if I'm correct, and if these stats are correct, he is the third, and let me repeat that, the third most dispossessed player in the Premier League. So, that's tough. I mean, he's trying a lot. He's trying hard, or he's not trying hard at all. But it's not real hard for these defenders to take the ball off of him, is all I'm saying. I mean, yeah, he was balling. I mean, all of Liverpool was balling against Man United, but he's just not cutting it this year. And I think now Liverpool have to face the consequences of overpaying this guy and really hoping that he does turn it around, or they're going to have to sell him obviously cheaper than what they would have sold him for last year.
Yeah, no, I love that shout in terms of disappointment based on sort of expectation. And I'm going to actually go with a teammate of his for my most disappointing player of the season, Darwin Núñez, who signed for Liverpool, £85 million in the summer. And so far this season, with 20 appearances, 8 goals and 3 assists. I mean, not the worst start to his career at Liverpool, but you'd expect a lot more for that transfer fee. Again, in terms of offsides, he's third in the league with 16. And that one red card that really showed us, I guess, how his season would have gone. So what we've seen so far, up and down, with glimpses here and there, but definitely, I think a disappointment for Liverpool fans in all. So that's my player. Mac, let's hear yours.
See, I love this category. This is probably my favorite category to do research on. And the interesting part is that neither of you guys actually picked people that would be my players that would be my top two. At least for me, it was even though I would agree though both those Liverpool players have been disappointing. I think we've seen a little bit more from. I guess if I would give it away, my second place player is actually unfortunately Anthony. You paid £100 million for a guy that scored 3 goals. So if my math equals out, that's £33.3 million per Premier League goal, which is not that great in his inaugural season in the Premier League. Obviously, tough transition. You could argue that hopefully going forward, he'll be a better player and have more of an impact in the Premier League for Man U. But actually, I'm going to read out something that might, I found a little bit interesting. So I want to ask, what do you think these players have in common? Danny Welbeck, Tyrone Mings, Thiago Silva, Ben White, Shea Adams, Douglas Luiz, and Reece Nelson. They all have more assists in the Premier League this season than Kai Havertz. He has 1 assist.
Ooh.
And arguably for me, in terms of his impact of what he should be for a team, I think he's been the most disappointed. He has 7 goals, 1 assist, 1 goal. One of the goals was from the penalty shot, so let's chalk that out. Let's say 6 goals, really. He was supposed to come into the Premier League and reinvent kind of that number 10 position in the Premier League, really show a lot of class. He has a great technical ability, but he has never really shown anything thus far in the Premier League in his career, in my opinion. And this season, we're supposed to go, because this is not just his first year in, where he's looking to be readjusted. He's a couple of years in. You're supposed to see that upward trajectory, but we've seen a regression from a player that looks like he has all the talent in the world. And thus far, he's been bang on average. I would argue, in terms of the big 6 Premier League teams, he's the worst number 10 out of all. I'll take Bruno this season over what he's provided. And the worst part is, it's all running through Havertz. Most of the time, he's not playing with a striker. He's the actual number 9, kind of showing as a false 9 in a lot of plays. So you think that he would be the beneficiary of those positions of naturally being in the attacking third more often than other players. But he's not. So for me, this year, he's been the most disappointing.
Okay, that's a great shout. Something that I didn't really expect, but no, with those stats, you kind of have to agree with that. I know that this is a very hot category, and so to start it off with some notable mentions, let me pull up my list. My second most disappointing player this year, I'm sure you guys have him as well in your notable mentions, Tottenham Hotspur's Richarlison. Commanding a 60. Gio, I know you're gonna get excited, but let me just read out his transfer fee of £60 million, and definitely not lived up to his sort of expected Premier League expectations. 0 goals in the Premier League this season. I know he has a couple assists and even won 2 penalties, but yeah, we've seen what his comments after the exit of Tottenham Hotspur out of the Champions League and how disappointing it was for him, but I'm sure the fans are a lot more disappointed than he is at this point with sort of the performances that he's pulled up for Spurs. So that's one of my notable mentions. I guess, Gio, let me give it back to you. Do you have anyone else, or do you want to just quickly add a comment to that Richarlison pick?
It would be another Spurs player. It's Mr. Heung-min Son. He has been very notably, eye test or not, hasn't been on the pitch all that much either. Yeah, he's been very disappointing. Obviously, the second half of that tied Golden Boot winner last year, both having, I would consider, or what even they would consider, a very disappointing season themselves. So, I mean, he's coming on to the wrong side of 30 very soon. So I think if he wants to make a move and play for, continue to play for a club of a higher scale, I think his exit is quite necessary while he still has the legs and still has that sort of that allure to his name. I think he needs to get out soon.
Okay, Mac, do you have anyone notable for this category as well?
No, my second place was, like I said, Anthony, but both of you had the shout. My favorite stat of the year, maybe of my life, is Richarlison has more yellow cards for the goal, more yellow cards celebrating the goals that were disallowed than total goals of the season. I think that's my favorite stat, and I absolutely love it. And it makes me happy every time I see it.
Fair. Okay, I'm going to give you guys one last one quickly before we wrap up this category. Gianluca Scamacca, major disappointment for West Ham fans. 35.5 million pounds in the summer, 16 appearances in the Premier League, 3 goals. It might be the curse of West Ham strikers, West Ham signing foreign strikers, but it definitely looks like it's a theme there, and he's definitely added to that. So hoping his season turns around. I think he did feature today, Mac, at the end of that England-Italy game. They're recording. They played their game today, but hopefully he can perform some more for that team. But I guess moving on to disappointing teams, I'll kick it off here, and I gotta have to go with the most disappointing team for me. Liverpool has been the most disappointing team this season, getting so close to Man City last season and pushing on all fronts to potentially win 4 trophies last year, to the drop-off that we've seen. It goes without saying, it's definitely been a major drop-off. Currently 6th with 42 points after 26 games. And last season finished 2nd, 92 points in total. And definitely a shadow of what they were last season. So for me, Liverpool has definitely been the most disappointing team this season. Gio, who do you have for most disappointing team?
My favorite team in London, obviously, West Ham. It's tough, tough year. Honestly, they haven't lived up to their hype. Obviously, splashing the cash to make signings. Scamacca, Paqueta. You thought it would be, all go for them. They'd be in the top 10 talk quite easily. Jared Bowen hasn't been great either. And he was, in top. Obviously teams were seeing if they could get him, but I think they can get him for much more of a discount now. But yeah, just overall very disappointing. Maybe they need a change. I do appreciate them keeping David Moyes for as long as they have, but I think, maybe it's time for a new mix-up, especially if they lose a player like Declan Rice over the summer. I think it's time for change in a lot of aspects.
Okay, yeah. Mac, what do you have for most disappointing team?
You see, I really thought one of you two were going to pick Chelsea, but because what I wanted to say is that I'm not disappointed. I'm actually happy. So then I can't really argue that I'm disappointed that they're doing so poorly, because it's great. It's fun to see. Everyone loves to see it. But I did end up coming to the conclusion that my answer is the same as Gio in regards to the most disappointing team. In terms of pure drop off, last year they finished 7th. They're currently 18th. So the standings wise, that's probably as low as you can go in a 1 year turnaround. And really, it's clear to see in terms of what their troubles are. It's really their struggles in front of goal. Last year they averaged 1.58 goals per game. This year it's 0.92. So they're scoring less than a goal a game right now, and it's probably the major reason why they're having trouble. Because defensively they're not around the same, conceding about 1.31 to 1.34 goals over the course of the last 2 years on average. So they're struggling to score goals. They brought in a striker to help kind of reinforce that. They still struggle to score goals. They brought another one in January, and he really hasn't had much of an impact thus far. So it's clear to see what the trouble is. Obviously, hopefully they do end up turning it around, but it's been very disappointing.
Yeah, definitely. My notable shout would have been West Ham as well. And like you just pointed out, the drop-off from last season, very much similar to Liverpool, just based on expectations. In the relegation battle at this point in the season with 11 games to go, you would never thought about it last year when they actually qualified for the Conference League. So definitely are one of the most disappointing teams this season so far. But I guess to wrap up this category, this part of the podcast, and this interesting category that I guess we can discuss now is most improved player in the Premier League. And so, Mac, I'm gonna let you start off with that one.
So this one, I really had to go with a Manchester United player because I feel like that's the only team that's performed well this year that I haven't shown enough love to. And I got to make sure the haters stay off my back just a little bit more. So my shout for this was Marcus Rashford. I think it's clear to see the impact he's individually had on Manchester United, because arguably if you look at their kind of overlaying numbers, they're not that great in goal difference. They're not that great in defense. They don't score a whole lot of more goals than other teams. So what's been their difference is in regards that they probably, I would argue, have been the most clinical. So in those key moments, taking away those 3 points, having that last second shout in terms of a goal, and the leading player to be able to do that for them has been Rashford. Last year, in 25 games, he scored 4 goals. In 25 games this year, he's on 14. So that's a great turnaround just year over year. And in terms of goals per 90, he's currently the best thus far in his career at 0.59. And this is actually the first year that when he scored 10 or more goals in which his expected goals is lower than what his actually goals have scored. So he's doing better than what his expected goals have been for the first time in his career when he's actually played a lot of minutes and scored a lot of goals. So that further goes to show how clinically he has been. And in terms of the turnaround, because over the last couple of years, I'd say prior to this year, many Manchester United fans were arguing for him to be able to be shipped out and look at being replaced. And I think Ronaldo is one of the players that Rashford one of the players that he really highlighted that needs to be better. And he really has been. So for this year, I feel like he's definitely been the most improved in my opinion.
Okay, I love that shout. Gio, I'm sure you would agree. Would that be sort of your most improved player, or did you have anyone else in mind?
Mac took the words from right out of my mouth. Right, like there are rumors of him, going to PSG, and and like he wasn't denying rumors. He was just kind of taking it as it goes. Obviously he got a lot of backlash, but hey, I mean, if you don't, if the team doesn't come out and say like, oh, he's struggling with injuries or anything, nobody's gonna know. So, but yeah, that. From reading articles and things of that nature, he was struggling with a lot of injuries. Never really came back to, complete full fitness. And I think having that time off and then really coming back strong, maybe under Ten Hag, who seems to be, almost a therapist to some. Getting that treatment mentally and for Sancho too, you see it. He comes back. He's a little different now. So. Yeah, I think Rashford deserves the credit for most improved player. Because he went from, oh, is he really good enough, to now, pundits and other players around the league are saying he's in the form of his life, which can only mean a lot. Being in the Prem, it's not easy to figure things out and to score at his pace. And like obviously there's Haaland, but not everybody can be a Haaland. So. Yeah, no, I think it's Rashford.
Okay, no, I love that shout, and I would have to agree as well. Just wanted to have a quick notable mention, and as I mentioned to you guys, basically, this category for me was a Gabriel Martinelli appreciation category. Definitely think he's improved in terms of his output for the team. I know last year he did have a couple goals, I think 6 goals and 6 assists. In the similar amount of appearances, 29 last season. Currently, he's at 28, and he's already at 13 goals and 2 assists. He's definitely a player on form that has been, I think, a standout player with the missing Gabriel Jesus for the sort of middle part of the season for Arsenal, continuing that title push. So that's definitely my shout for most improved player. And hey, 11 games left. If he continues this form, he could definitely improve on that goal tally and continue his sort of rise to what hopefully he is expected to accomplish in the Premier League. So I guess we'll just take a last break here, guys, and then we'll be back with the last 2 categories to talk to you guys about. So stay with us. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are just going to finish off this part of the podcast with our transfer of the season. And to, I guess, start things off, Gio, what is your, I guess, transfer of the season for this Premier League season?
Yeah, this one I'm going to have to go all biased, and you guys already know what's good. Oh, like, I'm not picking the obvious answer. I know the obvious answer.
Fair.
This is a biased answer. This is probably my one biased answer, or second, if you count Lisandro Martinez. And that biased answer we discussed in the midfielder shout, and it's Casemiro. I think again, the way the team is with and without him, there's very obvious things that are lacking. Did he deserve the 2 red cards? I don't know. But
yes, he did. What do you mean you don't know? Yeah, okay, sorry.
I don't know. That's why he. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. He choked them so hard, very, very, very hard. Yeah, okay. I'm sure he deserved the red card there. Good job, VAR. But yeah, no, it's clear and day when he's on and off the pitch. And I did compare it to Odegaard, but not quite like Odegaard. Odegaard's on a different level, Man, but Man United do really need him, and he is that kind of person who, again, takes a foul whenever you need him to take a foul. Is able to put some fear into other players that are driving down the middle, and he does a lot of the dirty work that, again, doesn't appear on the score sheet much. So yeah, I give credit to him, and a lot of Manchester's success is due to him being on that team sheet.
Okay, no, I love that. Just to disclaimer, guys, obviously we know Haaland is the transfer of the season, so that's going to be my pick. Hey, Mac, you might be disagreeing. I'm going to let you give us your take later, but I think I would speak for everyone, that's probably the transfer of the season. Though I love the way you went, Gio, because that is very similar to my pick for, I guess, notable mention for the transfer of the season, and that's going to be João Palhinha for Fulham. He is very much like Casemiro, very integral to that Fulham team, who are doing great this season. Their first year up from the championship, leading the league in tackles, 101 tackles, up there in terms of interceptions as well, 33, top 20 in the league. And guys, my favorite of all, tied for first in the league for yellow cards with 10 yellow cards. So, hey, very, very great, very, very good disruptor of the play that other teams will start to create, and definitely can hold his own in the Premier League in terms of quality. So, £20 million for the quality that he's brought to his team. Definitely, I think, a notable mention for transfer of the season. You guys may agree or disagree, but hey, that's my shout. Mac, let's hear your madness, please.
So it's not madness. There's logic and reasoning to my answer. So I feel a little offended with that terminology, but I accept the hate. Sometimes, people, I think, was it Da Vinci wasn't appreciated in the time because people, it's the same thing here. It is what it is. Anyway, my point being, in terms of the transfer of the season, my argument is that it's not the best player who was transferred. It was the best transfer for that team. By that logic, this is like very much a circle back around and really, really much a redemption arc for me in terms of appreciating this player, is Zinchenko for Arsenal. In terms of a career turnaround of how I thought about prior to coming to Arsenal to how I feel about him individually now, it's really much a 180. 4 of the last 5 seasons, he's won the Premier League title, and this by far has been his best season. He's never started this many games. He's never played this many games. He scored his first Premier League goal, finally, in his career this season, and he act like nothing happened, and he was disappointed in that game, because in that game, he really much led a comeback, and that they were even down at that point. But I think the biggest difference, it really unlocked, it's kind of like the final Infinity Stone if we're kind of using a Marvel movie reference, in terms of Arteta to be able to play the style of football that he wants, where he's in possession, he's on the front foot, he's playing with the one inverted fullback, where he's able to tuck in. It allows Xhaka to be able to run forward. It allows Odegaard to be able to run forward. So it really was the final piece of the puzzle to, as I said, for Arteta to kind of take over. Even though I would still argue technically there's a lot of flaws with him individually as a player, maybe defensively, pace, but what he's done in terms of transforming this Arsenal team, even just as a leader with his mentality, it is almost second to none in terms of what they've brought in from last season to this season, even more so than Gabriel Jesus, because really early on it looked like it that he might be that player, but Zinchenko very much has led that charge. And lastly, this is by him coming in and what impact that he's had in terms of what Arteta is allowed to do. It's not elevated just himself and the players around him, but his manager. Just over a year ago, I think both of you, and maybe some other people that were listening to it, laughed at the idea of when we were picking our 5-a-side team that Arteta was my pick for my manager for my 5-a-side team. A year later, that looks like a great freaking pick because of what he's been able to do tactically with arguably not that great of players over the last couple of years. A lot of people looked at. So for me, Zinchenko has definitely been a revelation and the transfer of the season.
So, is this the public apology that we were so much craving, Gio, from Mac for
This is
Zinchenko?
better than an apology. This is
No,
it
no, no,
not?
no, no, it's not better than an apology. I need a formal apology.
Oh, I am sorry, Zinchenko. You deserve all the credit in the world. As well as the day he signed for Arsenal, he already started a mural of Arsenal in his at-home gym. He's been on board. I think for him, career-wise, this elevates him conversation to what he was before Manchester City to where he is now. It's a different stratosphere.
Just to anybody listening, do yourself a favor and go look at the Pro Direct first touch challenge that he did. He is disgusting. It is
Madness.
far from disgusting. It
Yes.
is effortless and it is beautiful. Like the way he just do yourselves a favor and go watch that video.
That really puts it into question. We know Zinchenko. He starts as a left back for Arsenal. For the national team, though, I'm pretty sure he starts in the central midfield. And when he's playing for Arsenal this whole season, you see him pop up everywhere, picking up the ball deep, definitely spreading the team out by hugging touchline at times, and definitely coming inside and interchanging with Xhaka in terms of position. So, yeah, the quality is there, technique is there, and most importantly, just the knowledge of the game and being able to recognize what Arsenal need and where he's most impactful for that team. Definitely, I think a great shout, Mac, for transfer of the season, for the way he sort of revolutionized Arsenal this season. So yeah, definitely love that pick as well. Before we move on to our last category, do you guys have any potential notable mentions as well for transfer of the season?
I think in terms of Martinez, I don't. In terms of Gio, I thought that was what Gio was going to go with in terms of the best defender. I thought that would have been a fair shout. Because similarly, in that way, defensively, he was the final piece. He makes Varane make sense. He makes Wan-Bissaka Dalla make sense, and he makes Shaw make sense. So it's kind of very much similar in that way as a piece of a puzzle for me.
Okay, so we're gonna move on now to the last category, guys. Best player from the bottom 6 teams at the time of recording: Everton, Nottingham Forest, Leicester City, West Ham, Bournemouth, and Southampton find themselves there at the bottom. And I think I speak for everyone. The best player in sort of this relegation battle zone is James Maddison. James Maddison, 9 goals and 6 assists for his team this season. Definitely been a standout player when they were doing well after that rocky start to the season. And since he's been sort of missing as well recently, you can see Leicester dipping in form as well. And it's just a matter of time, right, guys? We expect James Maddison to be on the move in the near future, perhaps to a bigger club, no disrespect to Leicester City. But yeah, the quality that he has and the ability to single-handedly put that Leicester team on his back to find goal-scoring options when, Jamie Vardy is reaching older age and other strikers on that team are not firing. That's going to be my pick. But Mac, let me hear your pick for that.
So I think for me, I may be speaking for Gio here. I know Ray, you just tried to speak for. It didn't work out. I saw Gio's face too. For me, it's clear. I know Ray, you may not be a big fan of this player, but in terms of the bottom 6, I feel like this is probably the player that, if you asked me in 6 months, is he playing for a team in the top 4? Absolutely. Whereas everyone else, I would question they might move to a bigger team, but not necessarily a team in the top 4 and walk in and start. And that for me is a player that actually scored against Italy today for England, and that would be Declan Rice. In terms of what you want from kind of a holding midfielder, he originally started off as a centre half, if I remember correctly, transitioned to a midfielder, playing kind of as a deep line playmaker. He's able to do that job well in terms of progressing the ball forward. He's done much better in that year over year, and has really kind of added piece by piece to his game. It'll be interesting to see if you put a lot of, sunlight on him in that area of the pitch in terms of being a creative player. Does he really have the juice to be able to do that? Unfortunately, with this West Ham team right now, he's never going to be able to show that. So the only way we'll know is if he does make that bigger transfer to a bigger club. And there's been a lot of teams linked to him, if it be Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United. So it's just a matter of time before that does happen. But for me, if you would ask pure quality, who's going to fetch the biggest price, it'll definitely be Declan Rice.
Okay. Gio, Let's hear it from you.
Oh, I think I agree with you guys in the sense of those would be the obvious picks. But let's just say this: this player, if his team gets relegated, he's not getting relegated with them because he's gonna move up in the Premier League. He's gonna join a different Premier League club, much higher Premier League club, and that is the dead ball specialist, James Ward-Prowse. I think he just is too good for that club at this point. He's done it, back to back seasons. He's a proven dead ball specialist. He's a proven leader. He's consistent. He's really the highlight of that team, and he's always been the highlight of that team. And for him to get England call-ups, he is reaching that level. He's at a peak age of 28. He is leaving that club if they get relegated. It's point blank and simple. He is the best amongst the bunch. Deck is 100% definitely top tier in terms of the top six, but that would be quite obvious. He's going to fetch around 100 mil easily from any club. So yeah, and then James Maddison, of course, finding that form when Leicester was struggling and obviously being called up to World Cup squad. It was just a shame he didn't get some minutes. I think he could have, it could have done the team some justice. Who knows at this point? But yeah, I'm gonna have to side with James Ward-Prowse here.
Okay, no, I love that as well. That was one of my notable mentions. He's definitely, like you said, the best player at Southampton, and we expect him to make a move if they do get relegated. Which I hope that they don't for the Southampton sake. But the way the season's been going, I don't really see a lot of hope. But on that note, just a quick, mention for notable players. In terms of players that may leave their clubs if they get relegated, these two players, this pair from the same team, I don't think will be leaving their teams if they get relegated, and that's Nottingham Forest. Morgan Gibbs-White and Brennan Johnson. I think those two are quite standout for the age that they are at the moment, 23 for Gibbs-White and 21 for Brennan Johnson. The first year they have been playing together and what I think Nottingham Forest will be looking to build around should, things go poorly in the next 11 games of the season. I don't expect them to be leaving Nottingham Forest, and definitely putting a challenge to come back straight up around those two guys, because that's pretty much the future for that club. Gibbs-White, 2 goals, 5 assists this season, and Brennan Johnson let me just pull it up. Brennan Johnson just having a couple of goals as well, 7 goals and 2 assists. So still providing that team with some firepower, and definitely I think 2 players to look forward to for Nottingham Forest in the future. But I guess to you guys, before we wrap it up, any other notable mentions for this category?
Go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, of course. I would say Kiefer Moore. I think he can move to he can get on as a backup for a slightly bigger Premier League side. I think the goals he scores are against bigger clubs, so he has a knack for that. I think it'd be sad to see him get relegated, but I think as the games that I did watch him play, where he scored against he scored against Tottenham, he scored against I believe he scored against Arsenal as well early on. But yeah, no, I think he has the knack for knack in front of goal, and that he can score many more. Hopefully, he can kind of become sort of not quite the level of Danny Ings, but I think he can, that would kind of be his ceiling, and I hope that he can reach it.
Okay, and Matt?
For me, if this player was still on this team, Anthony Gordon would have been funny. I was like, oh yeah, Anthony Gordon, that would have been fun. And I was looking through Nottingham Forest roster list, but it got too long and I got bored, so I stopped looking through them, I'll be honest. The only other shout, I guess, is maybe Harvey Barnes. That's probably about it. Right. Maybe not to necessarily kind of a bigger team moving to, let's say, but I think very much maybe if the team's on the come up, or a team that just barely scrapes out of relegation, are looking to be able to add an attacking winger, he could be a good shout. But other than that, I think you guys were very coherent and named great players.
Okay, well, you heard it there, guys. This concludes our podcast for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social media. You can find us at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Tuesday when we'll look at all the international games taking place during this break as a whole. And so we'll definitely be excited to talk about that. Thank you, Mac, for joining us tonight.
Today, I am Zinchenko.
And Gio, thank you.
Fuck Mo Salah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for listening.